Welcome to the Self-Care for the Creative podcast, where we talk self-care strategies for creatives. We also talk mindset, wellness, personal growth, and artist development within the music industry. I'm your host, Stefani Fryzel. I'm an artist, author, and creative coach, and the founder of Stefani Fryzel Coaching, where we help artists, songwriters, and producers increase their impact, income, and visibility within a year with our artist development program. This season, we are diving deep into calling forth your next level. I'm so glad you're here. Trey Campbell is a Grammy award-winning songwriter and vocal producer hailing from North Carolina. Trey has collaborated with Ellie Goulding, Giveon, Masego, Lola Young, John Legend, Kate Trinata, Kim Petras, and so many more. He's earned 3 Grammy nominations, 2 in the Best R&B Album category and a nod in the Best Reggae Album category. Trey co-wrote Gut Feeling featuring her on the Grammy award-winning artist Ella Mai's debut #1 R&B album. He's also co-written songs for Lauren Jaregui, Amber Mark, Teddy Swims, and so many more. He's actually a friend of mine, and I'm so excited to welcome Trey Campbell. Welcome to the Self-Care for the Creative podcast, you guys. I'm so excited to welcome the amazing, phenomenal songwriter, Trey Campbell. Welcome, Trey.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me.
Of course. I'm so excited to dive into a bunch of different things today. But let's just start with a quick introduction. Tell us who you are, what you do, where you're from, and just a little bit of like your background story.
So my name is Trey Campbell. I'm a singer, songwriter, and newly executive producer. I'm originally from North Carolina in a little place called Gastonia. We call it the Gas House, but y'all are probably familiar with the P.D. Pablo song, North Carolina, come on and raise up.
Yes.
So that's the energy. I'm an only child. I grew up in church and sang in church, but I've always been ever so slightly shy. I always describe myself as a introverted extrovert, I think is the way that you say it. Like, I'm extroverted when I need to be, but I personally just love like one-on-one conversations, smaller groups, that type of thing. I moved to Los Angeles after I studied at UNC Chapel Hill, knowing that I wanted to be in music and feeling like my purpose was in music. But because I am a bit shy, I thinking that being front and center may not be the right spot for me. And also being a person that wants to be and walk in their purpose, I wanted to be the most like in my walk and in my purpose. So I tried so many different things when I moved here. I did booking. I worked for so many different venues. Ended up working for a small studio called Media Temple, which then changed to Temple Base. Started out just doing grunt work for them, coffee, scheduling. They had creative development clients that were young kids that wanted to learn how to become artists.
Yeah.
So they would have songwriters come in and out and work with them. They had more clients than they had songwriters, and they asked me if I wanted to learn how to songwrite. And
so cool.
It was in working with the kids that I saw them forming their identity around the songs, and I saw them blossoming as humans. And I just really felt like I had purpose there. I felt like I always describe how I view my position in the industry as sky. So I see all the artists and kids and stuff that I work with as all stars. And I know it sounds so cliche, but like each one of these positions is very, very important. We both hold a very important role. And if we're both walking in purpose and doing our absolute best, each one of us is the best. So,
oh my gosh, I had no idea that that's how you stumbled into songwriting. I love getting the little bit of a backstory because there's always like, okay, I was born here and then I did this and then I moved away. And we always are a weird transplant and then we tried a million things and then always stumbled into songwriting, or we always knew we wanted to songwrite, or we started as songwriters or artists first. And there's always like a story behind how we fall into it. I had no idea that that's like, it was through working with kids that you became a songwriter and how it gave you this meaning and purpose of like seeing them develop up and becoming who they were, that must have been so rewarding for you to create a space through a creative outlet of music and, you know, helping people find themselves. So Trey, you really are one of the most special songwriters in my mind, because you have this really like amazing, magical, nuanced ability to hold people in the room as an artist. And like, not a lot of people, like, obviously we're all songwriters here. We get like the role of the songwriter, but I feel like there really is a nuance to holding someone else in the room. And you do that so, so beautifully. And I just want to acknowledge that in you, because I think it really makes you an amazing writer and brings out the best in the other artists too. Like, I feel like that's why people feel safe with you. And so I'm wondering if you can speak to that, like when you go into the room as a songwriter, like, you know, that that's part of your job is to like be shapeshifter, hold the artist, help them tell their story. You know, is there like a pre-game before you go into the room that you're like, okay, I'm Trey, I'm gonna be, you know, your therapist for the day? Like, what's your sort of, you know, what's your setup for like going into the songwriting room? Because I know every artist is different, right? So you have to, what's that like for you?
So for me, like the artists that I work with a lot of them are namesakes, and a lot of them have very public faces. So going into a room with someone that sometimes they may not know, it can make them nervous and can make them uncomfortable. I really view each one of my sessions as getting to know someone new. I'm like really interested in people and their walks of life, and we're all writing about like age-old topics. So in order for a song to feel special and to feel different, it has to have perspective.
Right.
And I think you get perspective from someone when you actually just get to know them.
Right.
So I know that I'm going into the room as a songwriter, and ultimately the job is to write a song that is commercial and that has high impact. Right. But I really go into the room just genuinely wanting to get to know the people in the room, not just the artist. The artist is very much the centralmost part of my sessions, but I also want to get to know the producer as well. Yeah. And if I have a co-writer, because again, the songs that feel like they're fresh and new sometimes are like a blend of multiple different perspectives. For sure. And you could be missing a huge opportunity just solely focusing on like one person. The producer could have like fallen in love and had such an interesting way that they fell into love, and that impacts the artist. And maybe they didn't fall in love the same way, but you bring a little bit of that into the song, and then it becomes this really special thing that is still so relatable.
Totally. Yeah, for sure. Like, what do you do when the artist everybody's different? Like you said, sometimes they're uncomfortable if they don't know you. There's this really like setting of the table that has to happen energetically of like, I am safe. I am your ally. You know, tell me all your deepest, darkest secrets.
I know.
Let's get emotional, you know? Yeah, it's a lot. And so, you know, like what you said, like part of what's most important to you is to get to know the person. And sometimes in one day you can't get to know, or you can't break through a barrier, or maybe there's a block there, or maybe they're shy and they don't really want to get into a lot of emotional stuff. Like, do you ever come up against blocks within the artist and it's like hard to get to know them? And then that becomes your job of like just pulling the thread a little bit. Like, what are we writing about today?
For sure. I feel like, again, so many of these artists, like, I'm so precious with artists because, like, I can't imagine the shit that they go through daily. Like, the onslaught of public opinion. Like, oh, they did something different with their hair because they wanted to try it. And now there's a million people online reading them for filth just because they wanted to try something new. So when I'm coming into the space, I always start every single one of my sessions with conversation. I know there's a lot of songwriters that come in with like concepts and ideas, which I do as well. You always have those in the back pocket just in case like the session goes left. Right. But I feel like there's so many diamonds if you just like have an artist talk to you about their day. And if they see that you're genuinely there for them, and interested, they just become more comfortable. And they just like, even like artists that aren't necessarily or consider themselves like songwriters, they speak in song.
Right.
I think one of the most integral parts of a songwriter's job is listening.
Totally.
There's so many little diamonds that artists say, and it's also the way that they say them
Mm-hmm.
that make a song like specifically their song.
Yeah.
So I like to start out the session first and foremost with conversation. I
Yes.
know this sounds so cliche and so basic, but like, how are you? How's your day
Mm-hmm.
been?
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, how was that coffee? I've never been to that coffee shop before. Oh, that's so cool. Oh, you started there because you went with this friend. Oh, that's cool. And it just like, it opens up this dialogue and creates a space that feels safe, not only for the artist, but for myself to share things that are going on in my life and also for everyone else in the room.
Absolutely. Listening is probably number one skill for the songwriter to pull those gems out, to pull those diamonds out. Like you said, like if you're not listening to the artist and really picking up on their story or even just like the emotions behind what, you know, and like you said, you're very precious with the artist because you never know what they're dealing with emotional
Yeah.
baggage wise. So it's like handle with
Mm-hmm.
care. It's like that fragile sign on like a box, you know, handle with care just in case.
You never know what someone's going through. As
Totally.
well. Sometimes they just, also something else that I go into the session with, of course, we all want to write something that touches the entire world, but we're in such a beautiful time in music where commercially successful songs are coming from all different genres. They're coming in at all different tempos.
Yes.
So if you're really, really focused on like trying to tell that artist and everyone in the room's truth, the likelihood that it's going to have high impact is exponentially greater.
Right.
So it could be the ballad that changes the whole like sonic bubble in the music industry. And you could miss that if you're just coming in and being like, okay, like I gotta pay rent and I need a hit, so we need to get this tempo up. Let's go.
Yeah, no, for sure. You're totally right. And like that is again like what I said at the beginning, like just this nuance that you have to have and the ability to hold space for other people is such an important role as of the songwriter. And so I'm curious about like, you know, we go into these rooms, we're the sky to other people's stars and you know they're the focus and it's not about us, it's about their story. And of course like being an empath and a highly sensitive person, you pick up energies all day long. And then what do you do at the end of the session for Trey? Like is there a process where you're like, I gotta let go of all that energy and reset? Like what does that look like for you?
Well, first and foremost, I see it in the back. I'm gonna go ahead and pull up mine.
Yeah.
Yes. Self-care for the creative. If you don't have it, you need it. This is like a Bible for the creative. If you don't have it, shameless plug. Like honestly, you created something so special that all artists, all creatives really need, not just songwriters, but creatives in general. I am in therapy, and one of the biggest things that I'm learning, because similar to you and why I love you, is we're like quintessential empaths.
Right.
So the reason why we are great at what we do is we're able to take on other people's emotions and feelings and like create beautiful art out of them. The negative side of that is that you take it on so fully that it then mimics you. It becomes a part of you. And so in therapy, my therapist has been so great at helping me understand, okay, shedding is so important.
Yes.
It's important for you to be like, oh, this is my shit, and these are things that I need to deal with, and these are things that I've just picked up along the way in my empath journey.
For sure. Absolutely.
We forget that we're therapists in the room, and even therapists need a therapist.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
It's so important for you to have a space where you can just be like, I feel like shit and I feel worthless, and like get to the root of why you feel like that. And you, as a therapist, as a working songwriter therapist, can take those tools in the room as well and potentially help another creative in the space be like, I know you're feeling like that right now. Let's talk about like the root of where that's coming from so that we can hopefully figure out a game plan to get you better.
Absolutely. I'm so grateful that you were part of the book, and I loved being able to share your perspective and your story. And like you said, the emotional shedding, like, that technique that I was talking about with emotion separation, like I didn't
Mm-hmm.
realize how important that was, because I would be
Mm-hmm.
going to bed at night and feeling all this stuff. And I'm like, I don't even know where this is coming from.
Right.
What's mine, what's not mine? And then I'm like, oh, it's because I was with someone who was having a meltdown earlier, and that's why I feel like I'm having a meltdown. It's not my meltdown, it's their
Right.
meltdown. All right, we are taking a quick commercial break to tell you about my book, Self-Care for the Creative. If you are an artist, songwriter, creative entrepreneur, whatever it is you do, and you're feeling like you're running on empty or suffering from burnout, then Self-Care for the Creative is the survival guide you did not know that you needed. Inside, you're going to discover ways to nail the basics of self-care, how to thrive as an empowered empath, how to maximize your creativity and manage your career, and build a self-care toolkit that supports you. Self-Care for the Creative is more than just a book. It is a roadmap to staying sane, successful, and soulful in your creative career. All right, let's get back to the podcast episode. So yeah, thank you for sharing like that therapy is a good tool and technique and just a process for you to a space for you to process, what you're going through and what's happening with your life, and reaffirming that you need a space for yourself because you're so busy creating spaces for other people.
Say it again for the people in the back, honey.
Yes. Yeah, you're busy making spaces for other people, so you have to make space for yourself. So
It's so important. You can't be good for others unless you're good yourself.
Totally.
So
And
important.
it makes me think about something you mentioned in the book, actually, about some spaces you feel totally safe and welcomed, but then there's still other spaces, being a gay man, being a Black man,
For sure.
there's totally other spaces that aren't super welcoming. And you've expressed before in the past that sometimes there's places where you can't feel like you can be your authentic self. I'm wondering if you can speak to that a little bit, and if there's anything you think should change.
So, at being a Black gay man and growing up in North Carolina in the Bible Belt, I've definitely had experiences in life and in creative spaces where it was very clear that I wasn't necessarily welcome.
Right.
And I think there were years where I really took that on and I really started to internalize other people's feelings about myself.
Right.
And that's why I'm so thankful for therapy, because that's helped me separate like other people's ideas of who I am and who I see myself to be and who I feel and know that I am. I was in a session just last year. I won't go into names because it's not a name and shame, but I was in a session with a writer not from Los Angeles, from a southern state, and they had particular opinions about segregation.
Okay.
And this is why I say listening is so incredibly important. So this person was pretty much saying that like they didn't understand why segregation was such a bad thing.
Oh my
and
gosh.
The
And
reasoning
to your face said that.
in my face.
In your face said that.
So thank God
Yeah.
I'm saved, washed in the blood, because like that can make your blood boil, which it did.
Absolutely. Of course.
But I'm so thankful that therapy has helped me just take a second instead of immediately becoming upset. Think about like the impact beyond yourself. Like I always think of myself as a small part in a bigger thing. And listening to this like writer's explanation of why they thought that segregation wasn't such a bad thing, I understood that they were improperly using the term segregation. And so being an educated and intelligent person, I had to educate a bitch real quick as to what exactly segregation is. And then there are a lot of people that also don't understand things or don't comprehend things until it actually affects them.
Of course.
So
yeah.
The idea that they were trying to use was that they had moved from LA to a southern state and they had moved into this neighborhood that was more rural. And they wanted that because they wanted a complete change. And then this area that they had moved into was becoming more gentrified.
Right.
And so people were complaining about like the smell of cows and things like that. And he's like, this is why I don't understand why segregation's so bad, because like And to which I was like, first and foremost, we need to
clarify. Yeah.
we need to clarify
Yeah.
about segregation because I think you're using that term improperly.
Yeah.
And I just want to make sure that you understand this phrase because if you choose to use it again in other spaces, it's a choice.
Right.
And I hope they eat you the fuck up.
Yeah.
Secondly, I then was like, I feel like this person is also someone that doesn't understand because they're someone that has been able to completely live their lives without any type of anyone making them feel that they are lesser than.
Right.
They are. That should tell you the type of person I'm talking about. But I was like, okay, so you've moved from Los Angeles to this rural area using the term that you use, segregation. What if people decided that they didn't want you to move into their rural area? There are families that have been here for, I'm sure, centuries. And now you weren't born and raised there. You can't move there. We don't want you to be here. What if someone told you that?
Right.
You've worked so incredibly hard and you've got money now that you can purchase real estate. And now someone is telling you just because you weren't born and raised there, you are not allowed to own property there.
Right.
How does that make you feel?
Right.
And then I saw the wheels turning.
Yeah.
So now for me, while this was an incredibly upsetting situation, I now have hope that no one else will have to encounter this type of situation. Right. And if I took the blow for
someone else,
millions of other people, that's my fucking cancer heart. I'm working on that as well because boundaries are important as well. But now this person understands that segregation is not the word that they should be using, and they should be a little more thoughtful of people that have not walked the same walk they have.
Of course. And it's also not even your job to educate them on that either. Right?
Actually, I've heard that before, that it's not my job, but I think that change happens on a micro level. And I think that this person affects a lot of other communities. And if my choice were to be upset and to just be like, you're a racist and you should die, or just completely not take a second to actually educate this person.
Right. Then there's a missed opportunity. Yeah.
There's a missed opportunity. Then this person becomes quiet about their racism.
Right.
And that's why racism still exists, because there's so many people that are racist that someone was like, fuck you, you're a fucking racist. And they were like, oh, I can't say that in public anymore. Instead of educating them on why what they're saying is so damaging to people. And then also placing them in a situation that makes them be like, oh, if I were in that situation, that wouldn't make me feel good.
Of course, right.
It makes them think.
Yeah, it makes them think. But the hope is that they would have some self-reflection at some point in their life. But until they are met with a challenge or a situation or someone to cause them to think differently, they're not going to do that self-reflection.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
They're just going to go back to their communities and hold their same beliefs and create generations upon generations of people who are not kind to other people.
Of course. So with songwriting spaces, like you said, you mentioned there's, most of the time it's welcoming. You can feel like yourself, but when you're feeling like you can't be your authentic self, or, in that scenario, you were like, all right, let's just do an education moment. I'm going to deal with this in therapy a little bit later. But then, are there other times where you just, whether racism is a piece of it or not, or if you just feel like you can't be authentic around certain people, and how do you navigate that in the songwriting room?
So I always try to be authentic, whether that rubs people the wrong way or not. I think it's really important for me to be authentic in every single situation.
Yes.
Because at the very least, I can sleep sound. And again, having conversations about what may be going on. So if there's a tense situation in a room, sometimes I'll be like, let's turn the music off and let's talk for 2 seconds. I think conversation is a lost art. And I think it's a lost art for us as creatives because songwriting has become our job. So conversation should always end in a song. And sometimes conversation is just connecting to another person. So for me, it's about like, let's bring it back down to basics. Let's just have a talk about like, how are you feeling? Oh, this is making you not feel so comfortable. Okay, why is this not making you feel so comfortable? Or being like, it's really hard to be like brutally honest sometimes. I find that particularly hard when I think it's going to hurt someone. But if I think it's a situation where it's going to affect more people and this person is going to go to other sessions and make other people feel uncomfortable, I'm always down to just be like, hey,
I'll be the person. Yeah.
I'll be the person.
I'll be the person. Yeah.
Let's have a like talk about it, because sometimes we're also, well, I'll speak for myself. I'm incredibly sensitive and I could be picking up on something that isn't actually what it is.
Right.
And sometimes having a conversation about it makes it clear.
Right. That's a really, really great point, because we can often just assume, right? Or make assumptions about things. And unless you talk about it, have that conversation, get some insight on the perspective, you might not have it right, you know? And then through the conversation, the layers kind of peel back and you're like, oh, okay, this is the root of that, you know? When you mentored at the Songwriter series, you mentioned something about, as a tip for songwriters, like actually going to their journal and writing out as if how they would write in their journal, right? And using that sort of specific language or tone of voice or that way of speaking as a way to sort of find your songwriting voice. And I thought that was so interesting, because sometimes you don't think that that's your songwriter voice, just that conversational, like you talking to yourself as like the lyrics to a song. And I'm curious if there's any other like sort of songwriting isms or songwriting tips that like come to mind that you're like, oh, this tip really helped me with my own songwriting. And, you know, if there's one that you could share now that like really helped you with your songwriting journey, just like one major songwriting tip for you.
I guess it would be the Swedish math of it all. I think I've talked about that before, but it's Swedish math is just making sure that each one of your three major sections being verse, pre-chorus, chorus, making sure that they don't all start on the same beat. So maybe your verse starts on the one, your pre-chorus starts after the one, and your chorus starts before the one. And they're all like interchangeable. It just helps the feel of a song. When I was a baby songwriter, I would like be creating, and sometimes I would hit a bit of a block, because I was like, lyrically, it's accomplishing the goal that I want it to, but feel-wise, it feels clunky. Sometimes it's the fact that like, sometimes all of your sections start at the same spot, and it just feels very like, is it paint by numbers, or what is the thing that's like, it feels very like Legos. You're like, I don't know this Lego on this, and it feels very
there's no flow. There's no flow. Yeah.
So once I learned that, I started like, so I don't have it front of mind. Feel is still very important. So in creation, it should feel organic, and it should feel like you're just kind of, everyone's just vomiting all their feelings into the center of the room. And as you're starting to like structure, if it feels clunky, sometimes going back and just checking that little math can be the like difference between something that's a cute song and something that has like commercial legs.
Yes. That's such a great tip, because and also to separate the two, to be like, when you're in creation mode, let your creative wings fly, you know, don't think so much about like the structure or the, you know, the rightness of it all or the wrongness of it all. And then if something is not feeling right, or if there's a flow missing, or, you know, to just check that Swedish math and then maybe like, oh, let's just bump this to after the one, and then problem solved. For sure. So
I think it's like been one of, besides like journaling, it's been one of the most helpful tools. And I love like working with other creatives that their flow is just like, they get on a microphone and they do melodies, and like it helps, because as a songwriter, you have to be a shapeshifter. So for someone like that, that tool comes in handy, because it's going to just help everything feel ever so effortlessly structured.
I'm so curious, and I've been saving this question for you on this podcast.
Really?
Because, yes, I have. Because I'm like, I can't wait to just ask him because I know his songwriter brain. But like,
Yeah.
you are so, like you said, the sky to other people's stars. You show up, you're the songwriter, you set the table, you set the space, and your job for the most part is songwriting for other people. But as part of your creative process and like refilling your creative well and keeping your juices alive and all of that fun stuff, do you often or sometimes feel like you just need to write for yourself?
I definitely do. And it's funny being able to say that now, because before I wouldn't do it because it felt so narcissistic, and it felt like I need to be the artist and I need to be the center of attention.
Okay.
And it was in therapy understanding that like I had done such a great job at holding so much space for others that I had almost eliminated space for myself, and I'd created excuses as to why I shouldn't like create space for myself. And that comes from years of being a Black gay man working in spaces where you don't always feel welcome. You then start to be like, oh, I'm not welcome, so I want to take up the least amount of space that I can. And now I'm in a space where there's sometimes that I just need to like be with a guitarist or be with a producer, or sometimes like I can't play a guitar to save my life, but I will lay that bitch down on my lap and I will pluck 3 notes and like get all of my feelings off. It's so important.
So
like
good.
I'm very thankful for that revelation, because I would always go into rooms and like disappear into the artist. Still, you very much hear my voice, but I was hiding a lot. And now I'm not saying that I'm like pursuing an artist project at all, but I'm now holding more space for myself to just be creative and just to say it how I would say it. And
I love that so much. I love that so much for you. And I will
it's
be the
been so
first
cool.
person. Yeah, I'll be the first person to be like, take up all the space. Right. Take up all the space. The whole
all of this
stage.
body.
Yes, the whole stage. Well, no, I wanted to ask you that question because I think it was the showcase. I think it was in Venice somewhere you were performing, and you performed one of your songs. It was just Trey, and I was like, okay, now I'm experiencing Trey. I'm experiencing Trey. You know what I mean? Like not Trey the songwriter. I mean, it's all you, right? It's all Trey. But like it's a very different experience to be sort of the cheerleader for another person and then to be the cheerleader for yourself and to express your experience and express your voice and express your emotions and to let it be that and to wear it in front of other people. Like we don't give ourselves enough credit for that, for people who do that. And we also don't give ourselves permission enough sometimes to do that.
That's the biggest thing, is giving yourself permission. I mean, we could talk for days about like how the industry kind of wants to make you feel small always, because then you're more malleable, then they get more out of you. You got to take up space. I tell myself, I'm like, God made my body this big because he wanted me to take up space. I've been spending, I don't want to say wasting, but I've been spending so many years not taking up space and trying to like physically make myself smaller. And it just, that's not what God and the universe wanted me to do. They wanted me to be here and be big. So I'm trying to lean into that more. Yeah.
Oh, I'm so here for it. I got 2 more little itty bitty questions, and we'll
all the questions, boo. We can do this
all the questions. I know. I could do this for like another whole hour. Okay.
Literally, bring Deck in.
I know, right? I know he's in. So he might actually be like either on a nap or a walk, one of the two. I'm not sure.
He's so cute.
He's so cute and so big and chunky. Okay, so one of the themes that I'm talking about this season of the podcast is change. Just the season of change, and I'm talking about how I just had a baby and I went through this transformation and all this stuff. And we were texting earlier, and you're like, "How's Deck? How's he doing?" And I'm like, "Oh, he's great." But oh my gosh, such a major change. And you were like, I call that a life elevation.
Yeah.
I just loved that. First of all, I've never heard that before. And I loved that instant like reframe, because A lot of
Mm-hmm.
people are terrified of change. A lot of people
Yep.
resist change. A lot of people fall apart during change. And it's that sort of pressure that, that happens through change that forces this metamorphosis and then can either become something that, uplifts you or, holds you down or whatever. But the way that you
Right.
it's so instantly, like, it's a life elevation. So I'm
Yeah.
curious if there's been a point in your life where you went through a really big change that ended up being your life elevation.
For sure. So many people know that last year was an incredibly rough year for me. It felt like every aspect of my life was falling apart. And I've worked so hard to get into the space that I'm in my career. And it just felt like it was all just crumbling around me. My relationship fell apart. I was going through financial ruin. I'm really great at reframing for other people. Is something that I understood. I think I had to hit what I hope is rock bottom, like the lowest point for me, because I like barely made it out of 2024. Mm-hmm. But it took kind of having all of those things ripped away from me for me to be just grateful existing. Mm-hmm. And understanding that I had been given such a gift, not only to create like universes for other people, but to completely reframe and reconfigure myself. And that work has been hard, but when I tell you, it's been so beautiful and so affirming. I've always kind of been one of those people that needed external validation because there's always been the other side, like being devalued, that like when I get external validation, it felt like I was the best person in the world, but then being devalued made me feel like I was absolutely worthless. Now being able to like affirm myself in just the smallest ways has been so like beautiful for my mental health and just my like outlook on me as a human and like how I live my life and how I create. So the reason I think I'm really great at reframing for other people is because I don't want them to have to like experience what I went through to get to this space that I'm in now. But it definitely took like the foundational things that I thought were me being completely decimated,
taken away,
for me to be like, oh, this is really who I am, and this is really who I can rebuild myself.
Right. It's that rebuilding. Yeah, there's something, I mean, obviously as challenging and difficult as it is to have multiple pieces of your life sort of crumble and fall apart at the same time.
At the same time, girl, I was like, what are you doing?
Yeah. You're like, come on, can there be something stable anywhere?
Literally. Literally.
Yeah. And there's, like as challenging as it is, I also understand that like there is something almost beautiful about wiping the slate clean, going back to the drawing board, reassessing, redesigning, rebuilding, and being like, okay, maybe this foundation sucked and I need a better foundation. And we have to just rebuild. Yeah.
Exactly. And it's like, it's crazy because I think feeling like my entire foundation had crumbled, I figured out there was more there. The like thing that I thought I was just a piece.
Right.
And there's so much more there. And I'm just so grateful, even though last year was so fucking brutal. And I pray I never have to go through something like that again. Now on this side, I'm thankful for it because I just see myself much more clearly now.
Yes.
And I'm just so thankful. And now I also have this experience that I can hopefully go into spaces with other people that may be going through that and can be a bit of light for them.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Oh my gosh, I'm so glad that you're, on the other side, coming out the other side and, reframing and feeling yay. Oh, you're so sweet. This is the perfect segue to the last question because you're in the book. It's the Self-Care for the Creative podcast. So the last question is there a self-care piece of advice you give to your younger self?
Oof. Oh, that's such a good question. I think this sounds so cliche, but I'm always talking about doing the creative work when it comes to like finding your voice and journaling and all of that. But I think do the work when it comes to just like having a closer relationship with yourself. Let me break that down because that sounds like such a big idea. I think the better that you understand yourself, your strengths, and your weaknesses, the better you're going to be able to navigate this beast that is the music industry. If you're one of those people that is really great at creative but not great at business, understanding that first and foremost is going to help you navigate the people that you have on your team.
Yes.
And if you're not doing that work to have a like closer relationship just with yourself and trying every day to have a better understanding of yourself, it's going to be really difficult in the industry because there's going to be so many opinions and you're going to be working with so many people, and each person's opinion is going to like shape you for better or for worse. I look at so many people that I admire in the music industry, and they're people that, whether they were in music or not, they are just such a shining example of who they are. Like the good, the bad, the ugly of it. And I would tell my younger self to stop listening to all of the other opinions, take them with a grain of salt, and start to listen to your own heart.
Yes.
And really just like, you do such a great job at getting to know other people and make them feel comfortable and safe. And you really need to do that for yourself because you deserve it.
Oh, that's the best way to end this podcast interview. Trey, this was such a lovely conversation.
Oh, thanks.
I
I
really
feel so
enjoyed
honored that
this.
you. Oh,
I really enjoyed this.
means-
Honestly, also because like I still have mom brain, and I'm like talking to a baby all day long, and I'm like, oh, it's so nice to speak to adults. It's but not even that. Like, it's so nice to just have a really good, juicy, real conversation. So thank you for.
We always have the realest conversations because we the realest bitches, honey. Okay.
Thank you so much for listening to the podcast. If you're an artist, songwriter, or producer looking to rise to your next level, come join us at the Songwriter series for music mentorship from hit songwriters. Or join us at our annual Hitmakers Songwriting Retreat this October in Los Angeles. For more info on all our events, visit stefanifryzel.com or just email us at info@stefanifryzel.com. For more self-care gems, check out my book, Self-Care for the Creative. And don't forget, self-care is always within reach, and your greatest masterpiece will always be you.